I have in my hands a Hazet HP ratchet. I was in Germany when these were premiered at the Cologne Fair, they call it, the Eisenwaren Messe, I believe is how you pronounce it. And I was astonished by it. But in those 6 years in between, I've actually never taken one apart to see how it works. So join me. Let's do it. So as you can see, I've got a little different setup. I've got the camera I usually would film these videos on. I have set up with a macro lens. And I'm going to take it all, I'll take some stuff apart and show some stuff to you as I do it. So really, the point of this is to see why Hazet made the HP ratchet the way they did, and why it is so powerful for as many teeth as it has. So to start, I'm going to take this cheap ratchet that was one of mine that I donated to science for this exact reason, and I'm going to show you how a typical ratchet works. This part around the outside is called the gear. You can see around the circumference the teeth that are machined into the metal. And this is the ratcheting mechanism. This is where obviously the socket would go, and this is where you change the reversible forward and backward, left and right, however you want to say it. So these right here are the Pawls, P-A-W-L. And this is one pawl, and this is the other pawl, and these engage with the teeth on the outside of the gear. And typically this goes in this way, but it's kind of hard to show you that way, so I'm actually going to put it in backwards. And actually, I'm going to turn on I have a super macro mode on this lens, and I'm going to switch to it. Nah, that's better. That gets me in really close to the teeth. I'm also going to get a better light so you can really see this up close. Ooh. So now that the pawls are in the ratchet and you can see this, I'm going to turn the ratchet and you can see right there the teeth engage, and then we can turn it the other way and you can see the other pawl go this way. And the faster you go, the more teeth it will actually skip, but it will never not sit in a tooth as you turn it. Because as it sits and as it engages with that tooth, as you go the opposite way, right, it doesn't turn, which gives you the torque and the friction to turn the socket and then obviously adjust the fastener that you're fastening. Put my light back over here and I will disengage my super macro. And this is pretty much the universal standard for the way a ratchet is constructed. Now, this is an old design, and there are disadvantages to it. For one, if you want to make it stronger, you would need a bigger Toby. For instance, if you wanted to make this stronger, you would have to make the pawl bigger and the teeth bigger, which if you're going to keep it in this same size vessel, you have a limited amount of teeth that would fit in there. And that leads me to the second big issue, is that the more teeth you add, or the more space you add for the teeth, the less actual teeth you have, right? If you think about making these two things bigger, but in the same space, the amount of teeth that are in here will be reduced. So the problem with that is called return angle. And what happens is, to engage the ratchet, you need to turn it one way or the other, right? And so to engage on a smaller toothed, on a ratchet with less teeth, to engage the ratcheting mechanism, you'd have to turn it quite a bit to start the ratcheting motion. And so if you're in a tight space and you can only move the ratchet so much, you might not be able to actually ratchet or do anything with the fastener you're trying to work on. There's some math to the return angle too, and it's really dividing by 360, because we have a circle here, right? 360 degrees. So for instance, if we had like a 20-tooth ratchet, you would take 360 divided by 20, which would give you an 18-degree angle that you would have to turn the ratchet to actually engage it. So then you have this quandary, right? You have to decide whether you want a really strong ratchet, but that has less teeth, or maybe a not as strong ratchet, but that has, say, 72 teeth that gets you into really tight corners with a small itty-bitty return angle. And it's not so cut and dry as I make it out to be. There are gray areas, but generally, the less teeth you have, the stronger it is, and the more teeth you have, the more versatile it is. So Hazet decided to change that. They made the HP ratchet, and you might hear them called HP, you might hear them called HiPer, H-I-P-E-R, both stand for high performance. Because this has 90 teeth in it, but can also stand torque of 1,000 Newton meters. And so, I'm going to take it apart to see why that is. So join me at the table as we perform surgery on this Hazet ratchet. There's a retaining ring around the outside here. We're going to take that off first. Good. There we go. And then this just slips out like that. And you can see it's a reverse of the way the other ratchet was made. The gear, the teeth of the gear are on the inside opposed to the outside. And then the pawl right there is within the outside, or on the outside of the ratchet, ratcheting in. So let's take the pawl out here. There's a little spring right there. That's what holds the pawl and changes the direction and makes a ratchet. That's it right there. And that comes out too, but I'm going to leave it in there so I don't lose it. So let's examine the pawl here. And of course, no matter what, this is better steel than most of the other ratchets. It actually exceeds DIN standards, which are the German standards, by like double. And this grease, you can see it's pretty greasy, which is good for all tools, mind you. But this grease is a long life, long-lasting grease that Hazet uses. And actually, a side note, if you ever need to rebuild one of these, there is a rebuild kit that comes with that grease, and you saw how easy it was for me to take apart. I'm no pro disassembler of tools, so it's pretty easy to do, and you do get that grease. So back to the pawl. You can see opposed to the 3 teeth we had on the other one, there are 6 teeth, which creates way more contact between double the amount of contact actually, between the gear and the pawl. And it's even hard to see because, well, one, the metal's dark. And even with this close-up lens, it's hard to see, but there is very little slop in the teeth and the pawl. Even up close, it's hard to show. But you can see the gears fit really tight into the pawl there. And so that when this turns, you get a ton of torque forcing whatever your socket is, or I guess whatever you have on here. The friction between these two is strong. But the other half of that is that there are 6 tiny teeth that engage really, really closely with all these teeth, which gives you that really small return angle. So you've got a ratchet here that is immensely strong, but also has a really tiny return angle. To be exact, 4 degrees, which we were talking about a 20-tooth ratchet that was 18 degrees. This is 4. So not to mention the hardened steel we talked about earlier, but the other thing that's crucial about the way this is constructed, when you put this all back together, everything fits really, really tightly inside. And okay, so that doesn't seem like much, but it's constructed so that it's so tight and so perfectly machined inside that any debris or dust or anything that could affect the performance of the ratchet doesn't get in. So that, with the steel and the grease, make this really an impossibly strong and long-lasting ratchet. And so, like I said, this was premiered in 2018. It won the Eisen Award at that show that I was referring to in the intro. And since then, they've expanded the line. I actually showed you a 916 HP LG, which extends like so to give you even more torque. The original 916 is a 1/2 inch ratchet, and they've also come out with 3/8 and 1/4 inch and a bit ratchet. And the exciting part is that this year they're also releasing a VDE insulated version, and they're adding those mechanisms, the 90 teeth, really strong mechanisms, to their torque wrenches. So lots of exciting developments coming from Hazet this year. This is 2024, by the way, if you're watching this in the future. So if you've stumbled across this video on the YouTubes and you're in the market for a new ratchet, consider the Hazet HP ratchets. They're especially long-lasting, they're super strong, and they have a low return angle, which makes it an all-around great buy. But I'm biased. Do you have a Hazet HiPer ratchet? Let me know in the comments what you think of it, what your experiences are, and if you have any more questions or things you want me to address on this channel. As always, like this video and subscribe to the KC Tool YouTube channel, and we'll see you later.